Welcome everyone to Transfer Weekly. This now the season finale. Can you believe it? As this goes out, of course, this is now race week for not only F1, but for Formula 2 and for Formula 3 as well. Transfers pretty much all complete across the board. We've been covering them across the last 12 episodes. This now episode number 13. And we've got a big show to end season one on. I'm your host, Chris McCarthy. Joining us back on the show, our F2 editor, Tyler Foster. Tyler, welcome back. Good to see you back.
Thank you. It's lovely to be back for the season finale, although I do feel like every time I'm on, we have a very strong guest. So I feel like I'm certainly secondary, but yeah, it'd be nice to hear Tommo's thoughts on some, well, it's season's right around the corner, isn't it? So a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, well, Tyler's teed that up quite nicely. Joining us for the season finale is Tommo. Tommo, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me on. Tyler, you'd be disappointed. My upper body strength really isn't what it used to be anymore, I'm afraid. So yeah, that's not my forte. But I'm here to talk about whatever you're going to throw at me. And I was saying before we started recording, I know my limitations of my knowledge, but I try my best to not just fixate on the F1. You know, there is more to motorsport than just Formula 1 at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's what we're all about here in the feeder series. We're going to get into that very shortly. Tom, I just want to speak to you a little bit about one of the shows you do. I mean, we had Aldas on a couple of episodes ago. I know you guys are doing a bit of a get-together at the F1 Arcade the day this goes out. So congratulations and the best of luck with that. We look forward to hearing more about that as it progresses. But of course, I'm sure many people, as we're getting back to race week now, will be tuning in to the last lap on race day. Why don't you tell us, for viewers that maybe haven't tuned into it yet, a little bit more about the show?
Of course, yeah. So we started it middle of last season and essentially taken the race watch along idea because obviously so many people, well, partly because F1's behind a bit of a paywall, but even if you can watch the race, you know, I think a lot of people, we've seen that work in the football space, for example. Watch alongs work really well where you can watch the game yourself, but also interact with someone else who's watching it and get that sense of, I guess, shared viewership that comes with watching sports, because I find it's always more fun when I'm watching sports with other people, and not everyone can do that. So yeah, we run it for every single race. Watch along stream podcast that we shoot straight after, and yeah, just to try and kind of capture the nuance and the rawness, I guess, of F1 support. It's a shame we didn't start in 2021 because that would have absolutely gone off. But there we go. 2022 wasn't the best season, wasn't the worst by any stretch of the imagination, but I think 2023 we're on for a good one. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. I mean, I can imagine as well, it would have been a great watch along, but I think yourself and Niran do a really great job. And I've seen you do some podcasts as well. You've been doing them in the off season. And I saw your last guest, you had Miles Murphy on, which was really cool to see. A massive designer, gets all the crash helmets done for 6 drivers now on the F1 grid. So, I mean, tell us about some of the other guests you've been having on the podcast.
Yeah, so we try and kind of keep it varied. What I actually quite like doing is getting people on who have profiles but aren't necessarily known for being F1 fans. Like our very first guest actually last year on the last lap was Pieface, who's a massive FIFA streamer, really known for his football stuff, but he's also a huge Max Verstappen fan. And those are the kind of instances where I think it's nice for people who maybe are known for something to almost bring them into an F1 space so that they can talk about something they're passionate about and not just be known for what they're known for, if you know what I mean. So Pi was a great one. He's like super enthusiastic. I actually saw him at the Williams launch as well. So he's getting about. He's not just doing football stuff. He's getting about in the F1 space, and he's a lovely geezer as well.
Yeah, I saw him at the F1 Arcade event, actually. It was really, really great to see him there. So he definitely does love his F1, doesn't he? But we'll definitely tune into more, and you can go and check that out on YouTube, on Spotify, on all the usual places. The last lap. Do check it out on Sunday, the watch along when the race gets going for the first round. Okay, Tom, I want to stay with you. Of course, testing has begun as we record this now Friday. We're deep into the second day of testing, and one new face that we didn't expect to see on the testing grid yesterday was reigning FIA Formula 2 champion Felipe Drugovich. Of course, Lance Stroll picking up an injury after a bicycle incident. He's also been confirmed as a reserve driver for McLaren. What did you make of seeing him out on track in that Aston Martin?
Yeah, Felipe just did such a good job last year. Like first and second half of the season, he was top Even if you split the season down the middle, his consistency throughout. Yes, he didn't have the cleanest kind of run in terms of his F2 career, jumping between teams, but at the end of the day he got the job done, and I think he showed that he's a more than capable set of hands to jump into that car. Obviously we don't know the extent of Lance's injuries and how long he may be out for, and that's the job of a reserve driver, to be able to step up to the plate, and being thrown at the deep end like this and getting this test mileage is only going to help Felipe develop quicker and sooner. Like, testing is limited for everyone these days. It's not like 20 years ago where you could do more than an entire season's worth of testing before the season's even started. So this is absolute gold dust for Felipe. You've got to take these opportunities when they come up. We saw it with Nick de Vries last year, and we've seen it to an extent with Felipe. We'll see how far it goes for him. Obviously all the best to Lance, but if he's not able to come back, then it is a great opportunity for Felipe.
I mean, it would almost be meant to be, wouldn't it? He's champion, gets signed to Aston Martin, first race of the season, able to jump in a Formula One car. I mean, even just doing the test, it's been really great to see him out there, and I think he's conducted himself very, very well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's clearly got his head screwed on. Obviously, he would have wanted a full-time seat, but there's so many factors outside of, again, Nick de Vries is a prime example. You can win Formula 2. There's not one set route. You should never give up hope. I think Logan's even talked about, at one stage he gave up hope of ever getting into F1, and then things ended up, coming around and coming into his favour. So all Felipe can do is put himself in that shop window, get himself in the paddock, make himself aware to not just Aston Martin but other teams as well, because you just never know what's going to happen, especially with obviously Aston having Fernando Alonso, who's almost 42 years of age. I mean, who knows when Fernando will retire? He'll just go on for forever maybe. But you never know, the opportunities are going to come up, and Felipe Drugovich, he's got a great track record. Seems like really, really sound, level-headed, knows what he wants, and I'm hopeful for him.
Okay, speaking of champions, we had 2 more champions crowned as well, Tyler. Why don't you bring us up to speed? 2 more champions crowned over in the Middle East over the last week.
Yeah, we had 5 rounds of action in Formula Regional Middle East and 5 rounds of action in F4 UAE, and both always seem to produce. Last year we got some great title battles. This year Kuwait was added to the calendar, and we had Kimi Antonelli against Taylor Barnard, 2 drivers who, are really making their move up in the ladder now in feeder series. Antonelli is a driver who I think is one of those generational talents, like the Leclercs or Russells, who seemingly everywhere they go are expected to just get in the car and win. And this was his debut in Formula Regional, because he spent last time in Formula 4. And to step straight up into Formula Regional cars in a winter series and to almost dominate it, he won by 40 points in the end. It did come down to the final round in Abu Dhabi, but it was such an impressive drive all season long from Antonelli. And I mean, he's a Mercedes junior for a reason, and there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders, but he'll be stepping up to FRECA with Prema this year. So not quite up to Formula 3 yet. I know a lot of people are frustrated about that, considering the level of talent that he has. But I think when you have someone that is as special as him, you need to be careful, and they've made it clear that they don't need to rush him yet. And Taylor Barnard as well, for the recently new German PHM team, doing a really good job there. And now, as we'll come up to later, they'll be stepping up to Formula 2 and Formula 3 this year for the first time in their history. And then, in the F4 UAE, we had another really exciting battle, this time between 3 drivers. We had James Wharton, the Australian, who ended up winning the title, winning 2 of the final 3 races in Abu Dhabi, Tuka Tapanen and Ugo Chukwu. 3 drivers who, in their own right, are all very special. Again, a few years younger, perhaps, than the drivers in FRECA, but it always offers the great opportunity to see before the season, the main season, the summer season in Europe has even started. We get some great title battles, and we saw in Formula Regional Middle East last year guys like Dino Beganovic and Gabriele Mini fight it out, and then they went on to FRECA and battle it out all year long again. So sometimes it might take a year or 2, but these drivers will come back into the same series and they'll have a bit of beef with each other because of these sort of winter series. So it's one of those ones that some people might not pay 100% attention to. And I know being a FRECA champion is not considered to be the be all and end all when you compare that to being something like a Formula 3 or FRECA champion. But I think it carries a lot of weight inside the motorsport business and certainly helps with your future moving up that ladder.
Yeah, it's amazing. Kimi Antonelli's already won 4 single-seater titles in less than 2 years. So Mercedes, definitely big things ahead for him. And people already dubbing him as the favourite for the FRECA title. Let's talk about another championship, one that's going to be new to the calendar this year, and that is the F1 Academy. Now, they announced their calendar this week as we record. Tracks on there include Red Bull Ring, Valencia, Barcelona, Zandvoort, Monza, Paul Ricard, and then they will have one F1 support race over at Austin, Texas. A lot of track time included in there as well. 3 races in total. I want to come to you, Tommo, for this. What do you make of the F1 Academy in general? Do you think this is a good idea? Of course, we've seen the W Series over the last couple of years. It's gone very quiet now. It seems F1 Academy is the new way forward for young female talent. Do you think this could work?
I think it depends what you define as work, I suppose. I think there's certainly an argument that it's not perhaps addressing the problem of a lack of female representation in motorsport early enough. But also I do think that the power of W Series in terms of highlighting and showcasing women drivers to the world isn't going to be seen for a while, because for me, it's an attitude thing that needs to change, and that will change over time. You know, you think of motorsport and the assumption is there's going to be a male behind the wheel. That's the way it is. That needs to change, and that will change over time with stuff like this. There's also obviously the argument, well, segregating male and female drivers, is that right? Is that wrong? And it's kind of, is it a necessary evil almost? Because there is no reason, as far as I'm concerned, why a man and a woman can't race head to head in the same machinery. And look, I always say this, even if you tick every box of privilege and you meet all of the, you have every leg up, the chance of you actually getting to the top tier of motorsports, Formula One specifically, is still incredibly unlikely. And it's, I hope F1 Academy does a good job at actually trying to not just be, I guess, performative in it as well, but actually try and actually make a difference and address the root systematic kind of societal things that are attached to women in motorsport and to young girls in motorsport, because these things still exist, but hopefully in time that's to me what I think about, when you say doing the job, that's the job that needs to be done long term to a stage where we want to get to a stage where we don't need a separate, gender specific series. But right now it's kind of, I feel like it is a necessary evil somewhat.
Yeah, no, I think that's very well said, actually. And I think the good thing about it is the funding, isn't it? That they're going to match the amount of money that the drivers put in. So big funding coming in from F1 there to help the drivers get on the grid that maybe couldn't afford it before. So we'll see how it gets on. We'll follow it closely here on Feeder Series. Now, this is Transfer Weekly. As we get to the last episode, only one transfer to talk about in the series that we really cover on this show. And that comes over at FRECA RPM, the Irish team announced their first driver for the season, and that was Irish driver Adam Fitzgerald. He graduates from British F4, got a best result of 5th there last season. He has been racing over in the Formula Regional Oceania Championship as well, but he steps in with RPM. Tyler, who had some really good results towards the back end of last season, it has to be said. How do you think Adam's going to get on this year?
Well, if you take a look at his resume so far, it's certainly not a driver who's stepping up because of money or solely because of that. He clearly has ability. He scored points in both the F4 British Series that he raced in last year in the summer, and also competed in the Toyota Racing Series, which is now the Formula Regional Oceania Championship with Giles Motorsport, and scored points in that series as well in the 9 races that there was. So, as you say, RPM had a good finish to last season. We often see with teams like that the phrase, "Well, let's hope that they can carry it on to the new season." But when you have a new driver in, that is really imperative, because if you don't, then you're sort of standing a dead man walking. So I think that he's certainly moving up to a category where the talent will have to be on show. We talk about how difficult it is in FRECA to stand out if you aren't at that level. But I think that Fitzgerald is someone who certainly deserves to have at least one season there. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on.
Yeah, we'll see how they get on, and best of luck to them and to RPM. Now, away from driver transfers, one thing we've talked about a lot on this show over the last couple of episodes has been F1 Academies and F1 junior programs. And two teams that did that between the last show and now were Sauber and Mercedes. They announced their F1 junior drivers for 2023. I'll go through a couple of the Mercedes ones. They have Frederic Vesti, Paul Aron, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, and then a few drivers from karting as well. Sauber, Teo Pourchaire for them in F2, Leonard Boulet as well in F1 Academy, Marcus Armand and Tame Saleh in karting as well. Tommo, what do you make of the F1 junior programs? I mean, they seem to be growing, particularly within karting, don't they? Mercedes in particular lined up very nicely there with three drivers who could all fight for titles in F2, F3 and FRECA. Do you think in general F1 over the last few years is seeing the teams grow junior programs?
Yeah, it's nice to see that, because junior programs have existed for a very long. Like Lewis got picked up by McLaren when he was 12, 13. Look, Red Bull have kind of dominated the whole subject of F1 driver programs because they've had a very kind of broad kind of scattergun approach. Like they'll take anyone on who thinks they think is like the real deal and ready, and give them that support. And if they don't feel like they meet expectations, they will let them go. But it's nice to see. I mean, you mentioning Kimi earlier, obviously he's part of Mercedes and he is looking very impressive so far. Obviously it's a lot of pressure and expectation to put on someone so young as well, and so I do hope that isn't, because I think that can be a blessing and a curse, can't it? Obviously you light up the scene so early on in your career, and it's, can you actually deliver that through expectations? I mean, we look at Oscar Piastri going into this year in F1. He set such high expectations in his junior formulas. Will he be able to deliver on that? So yeah, it's nice to see the teams, because we want to, the sport, motorsport is so difficult to enter. F1's in such a great place. These teams are at the top, and giving those opportunities and giving that financial support to some of these drivers who they've got the raw ability but not necessarily the funding. It's good to see, and you want that pyramid to be, you want that money to trickle down, and I guess that's one way of allowing that money to trickle down. Is to support young junior kids in karts.
Yeah, I think it's great actually that the amount they're doing, particularly Mercedes picking up Kenzo Craigie was the new one they signed. I got to interview him after he won the British Kart Grand Prix last year. Really nice kid. Alex Powell, the young Jamaican driver as well in karting as well, who I genuinely believe will be the next Zane Maloney. So let's see how those guys get on. But some really good things going on with F1 junior programs. Tyler, why don't you bring us up to speed with some of the other news that's been going on in a couple of the other series?
Yeah, there's a few other things just to talk about. So obviously the Euro Cup 3 championship, which is just making its debut this season. It's a bit of an alternative compared to that of FRECA and the Euro Formula Series, which has sort of tapered off in support in the last few years. So hopefully this will offer drivers looking to make that step up the ladder another opportunity. We've seen Francesco Braschi and Sebastian Ogier enter the fray. In the driver lineup there, Braschi going to Campos alongside Taz, Inter Fuvasak, and Sebastian Ogier going to MP Motorsport. Meanwhile, we also have DriveX joining on the team side of things. In Euro Formula Open, we've got a 41-year-old Vladimir Netasil joining for Effective Racing. So if there's anybody out there that likes to see their veterans getting involved in the racing, there's certainly someone to look for there. And then we have Enzo Trilli, obviously son of an F1 driver, moving over to Super Formula Lights there. Risu Shijima, someone who we've seen a lot of drivers recently in terms of monetary issues and not being able to quite make it to the step which perhaps they deserve. I think William Alatalo is another driver that you could probably throw into that category, but it's a shame that Ushijima won't be able to maybe make it up to F2 or even further, considering the talent that he showed in Formula 3. But he'll be moving over and keeping his racing career going in USF Pro 2000 over in the States. And finally, we had Hamda Al-Kubaisi, who was competing in the Formula 4 UAE Championship. And in the final race of that championship, she actually suffered quite a horrific-looking broken arm, and she was hospitalised as a result of it on the final lap of the final race of the round. She's recovering, and she's doing better now. And she ended up scoring points, actually, ironically, in that race because of the red flag that was caused by her crash. But she's on the recovery, on the mend. But we wish her all the best after that accident.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone who could given she's competing in F4, be going to F1 Academy. Who knows, given that's the car they're going to be using. Tommo, I mean, we can't have you on here and not talk about F1 in general. We have to talk about the season ahead. I think we should focus on the new drivers we're going to be going into this season. We could talk all day about the season in general, couldn't we? Give us your thoughts on how you think the new faces are going to do. You know, we've got two former champions in Formula 2 there, and Oscar Piastri and Nick de Vries, and then Logan Sargent, fourth last year as well. How do you think these guys are going to get on?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So de Vries is obviously not your conventional rookie. He's gone away and won in Formula E. He's got a well-rounded body of experience behind him now, I suppose. So it'll be interesting to see, and obviously he showed at Monza last year what he can do. So I'm confident he'll be at a good level. You know what I find funny about Piastri and Sargent? It's kind of like they, what was it, 2020 in Formula 3, Logan was, right at the sharp end with Oscar going into that final race at Mugello. Oscar ended up taking the result. And then their careers just went on completely different paths. Oscar went straight to F2 and won it. Logan did another season in F3, and that, I think it was in a Shrews, wasn't he? Wasn't really able to, got that one result, I think, at Sochi. And, all of a sudden they've both got it back into F1 at the same time. So it's really strange. And again, it's like, I guess, never give up hope. And Oscar's taken the more kind of, the more impressive step through, for sure. You look at, when you win back to because he won the year before F3 as well, didn't he? He went back to back championships. It's, George Russell, Charles Leclerc levels of, domination, really, and took those back to back race wins in 2021 as well, and on the sideline to Alpine, and gets this opportunity. And actually, he was going to go to Williams, wasn't he, which is the seat that now Sargent has. So it's funny how they've kind of come back together. There's a lot of hype behind Piastri, and expectations seem to be a lot lower for Sargent, but I don't write Logan off, because when they've gone wheel to wheel together with each other, Logan's been more than capable of holding his own, for sure. Oscar hasn't just driven off into the sunset. So yeah, I've got high expectations for both, because I do think the results haven't painted the full picture. I think he's definitely going to be he'll be a step up from Latifi. I'm sure for that, for Williams. And Piastri's got pressure, but then Lando's driving at a great level. It won't be a surprise if Lando beats Oscar, I guess, but then there's so much hype, and with all the Alpine drama as well, that's just added more eyeballs onto it. So big pressure on Oscar. But yeah, I don't think there'll be much in it between them. I think they'll both do a solid job, for sure.
Yeah, two great characters at McLaren there as well, isn't it? It's going to be fantastic to follow. But and as you said, a great fight back from Logan, because at one point it looked as if it was all gone. But I remember him in karting; he was the man to beat. He won multiple world and European titles. So well done to all three of them. Let's see how they get on. Okay, let's quickly talk Formula 2 and Formula 3 before we wrap the show up. It starts this weekend. We've had testing. We've had pretty much the grid complete. Tyler, we'll start with you. What do you make of Formula 2 this season? Having watched testing now, it's the first time we got you on the show since then. What's your thoughts ahead of this season?
Oh, I mean, I'm rubbing my hands together. It's extremely exciting. There's so many stories everywhere. People talk about, obviously, F1 being the pinnacle of motorsport. I really think that F2 at times can offer more drama than F1. I think if they put the budget of Drive to Survive into Formula 2, there would be too many episodes to go on, because you look at this season and you've got both Prema drivers from last year moving over to MP, who are the reigning teams champions. You've got Felipe Drugovich moving on, as we spoke about. And when you have a Prema team like last year who struggled as they did, and both Hauger and Derivala have come along saying that the car was certainly not at the expected level that they were hoping to step into, considering how dominant Prema have been under the likes of Schumacher and Piastri. And now to move over to another team that have just come off the back of winning the title, there's pressure there. But then Derivala's got Formula E duty. I think there's been a bit of a changing of the guard. We've seen the likes of Armstrong and Vips move on. I know Derivala is still here, but he's got that Formula E duty. I think to an extent, Hauger will now be leading the team. So there's a driver who's now expected to fight for the title. You've got Pourchaire and Doohan, who are, I think, the other two title favourites coming into the season. Pourchaire's at a point now in his career where a lot of people are beginning to point the finger at him and go, all right, show us something more, show us a bit of a championship season. Because I think, despite the fact that he's obviously had the results and got poles got that pole and win in the feature race in Monaco in his rookie season, I think last year some people were disappointed by it, which I think shows the level of expectation that is on his shoulders. Coming back into it now, he's with F3 reigning champion Victor Martins at ART. They're a team who last year just lost out on second to Carlin. Carlin have got an all-new driver lineup with a Fittipaldi, who's now a Red Bull junior. There's so many things going on. We've got 12 F1 Academy drivers as part of the F2 grid, which I think is a record. I think last year, there was 11 at the start of the season. 6 Red Bulls, 2 Ferraris, 2 Alpines, 1 Mercedes and 1 Sauber. So, when you talk about F1, sometimes you need to also remind yourself that with 6 Red Bull juniors sat there off in the grid, on the series below, that what if Nick De Vries doesn't have a great start to the season? What if Sonoda regresses? What if Guan Yu Zhou has a poor season? Keep your eye on whose contracts are running out in F1 for the end of this year, and then keep your eye on who's doing well in F2, because guys like Ayumu Iwasa joining as a rookie in F2 last year from a pretty mediocre F3 campaign, and then now being expected to be fighting within the title. You have drivers sometimes just come up and make a difference out of nothing. And I think that F2 always provides, we've got guys like Ollie Behrman, who I think fall into that sort of Leclerc fold of drivers who you are expecting to come in and make a difference straight away. But, the guy's still 17 years old. So, there's so much expectation on the grid. There's so many teams who are making their moves, a lot of new driver changes, and obviously as we spoke about earlier, we've got PHM coming in both F2 and F3, working alongside Charouz. It'll be Charouz that will be still running the team in terms of their personnel this year under the management of PHM, and then PHM will be taking over the team full time next year. So there's a lot, there really is. I would say if you're someone who enjoys F1 and tries to catch the F2 stuff here or there, I would say that F2 genuinely has the capabilities of being on the level of 2018 with Norris, Russell, Albon, De Vries, Markelov, so many talented drivers. And I feel that when you look at the expectations of who's going to be fighting for the championship, there's always at least one that doesn't get it. And that means that there's going to be some big driver, could be Doohan, could be Pourchaire, that has a bit of a regression, a bit of a disappointing season. So yeah, and then finally, just to talk about the F3 drivers, the top 7 from F3 last year: Martins, Behrman, Maloney, Crawford, Hadjar, Stanek, and Leclerc, all are moving up to F2, which means that there's a bit of a switch now between F3 and F2, which F3's even more difficult to call. So I know that you're going to be doing the commentary, Chris. So I'll let you do the expertise on that. But yeah, F2 is going to be extremely exciting this year, and looking forward to it all the way.
Fantastic analysis. Tommo, what do you make? 12 F1 Academy drivers. I think everyone's going to be looking over their shoulders, aren't they, in F1? And that is going to be fantastic to watch.
Like, you can make a compelling argument for any of these F2 like, there's so many. Hauger, like F3 champion a couple of years ago, like Zane Maloney's like momentum at the end of last season was exceptional. Like, Iwasa's scored like over 100 points in the last 7 races. Like, he was, he had a really slow start to the year, but just came good. Ollie Behrman's like, I can't call it. Like, Jack Doohan, like he was really unlucky second half of last year as well. He, I think his pace was right at the sharp end. Vershaw was in the points like pretty much every race for the last 6-7. It's very, very tough to call. And again, Théo Pourchaire, like he just came out the blocks like crazy last year, and then just second half of the season just had a bit of a stinker, things inside and outside of his control. So it's just, oh man, there's Victor Martin is like F3 champion. You can make so many good arguments for so many of these drivers. So yeah, I'm excited. I've got to say, I've got to give like a prediction. I'm gonna say, I think the pace of Ayumu Iwasa, especially, Le Castellet was ridiculous, but that second half of the season, that momentum again, I think he can carry it in, staying at Dams this year as well. My pick's Iwasa, but honestly, it's so up in the air. I'm buzzing for this year.
And give us a name, Tyler. Who's yours going to be?
I did a whole prediction the other day, and as Tommo mentions, when you talk to people about the level of drivers there are, people get annoyed because I haven't got Leclerc in the top 10 because of this reason, or I've got Crawford down here or Hadjar up here, or you've got to move someone down and someone up. So my top 3, I believe, was, and it's really boring, but only because I just expect that this is because I think it'll be Doohan. I think Pourchaire, realistically, I think he'll he'll get his F1 opportunity eventually. I don't think he'll need to win the championship to do it. So I think he'll finish second again. And I think Hauger with MP Motorsport will finish third.
Right.
I think Iwasa fourth, yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. Well, with F3, 17 drivers set to make their debut. I have it at, and I think it's 8 drivers with F1 back in there as well. We could talk even more about F3, but I think sadly we're going to have to end it there. Thank you very much for joining us, Tyler. We're going to, of course, look at all the F2 coverage thanks to you, and we'll put a link to that article you mentioned in the description. Tommo, thanks so much for joining us for the finale. Been great to have you on. I mean, I know you got the last lap stuff, and you've also got your F1 arcade show as well. Have you got and many other things coming up? I mean, I think that's busy enough already, but tell us what else is in store this year.
I got some other stuff in the pipeline, but mainly it's same old. Just covering the season. Hopefully the season's a good one in Formula One, and hopefully, not that I do much F2 content on my channel, but I'm from a pure fan perspective, I'm buzzing for this weekend. So yeah, more of the same. But yeah, onwards and upwards. Opportunities are coming, and got to go to a couple of car launches as well, which was amazing. So yeah, it's good. I'm happy.
Oh, aren't we all? We're so excited. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all the guests that have joined us throughout the 13 episodes. Thanks to Jim for editing all the shows as well. He puts in a lot of hard work behind the scenes, and thank you to all of you for viewing as well and supporting the show. It's been an amazing first series. No doubt we will be back again for more next season. We will return for a FRECA special before the season once testing gets started, but for Transfer Weekly Season 1, that is the checkered flag, I'm afraid. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you all for watching. Do give a like and subscribe. We will see you for the FRECA special. If not, we will see you next season. Do all enjoy Bahrain this weekend. For now, though, it's goodbye.